Okay, welcome everybody. Yeah, right on. Welcome to Types of Entrepreneurs, Qualities of Entrepreneurs, and the Traits of a Successful Entrepreneur. That's our topic today. I am the company's expert, and subscribe to my channel. This is my live channel and also my proper channel, the company's expert. And for everybody who is joining us today, we have a chat, so feel free to type your questions into the chat and we will see those and we can answer some questions for you. And all the usual public service announcements. Join my Facebook group. There's a link in the description. And today I'm joined once again by Luc Bohunicky. How you doing, Luc?
About a 7 out of 10, Bill. How about you?
A 7 out of 10. Okay, I'm about a 7 or 8 out of 10. So that's pretty good. Why only 7?
Very good. Well, you know what? If I'm going to be really honest, probably one of the traits that I wouldn't suggest of an entrepreneur is to be late. So it's never a good quality to have, and it's probably my least favorite quality about myself. So I was wolfing down food at an exponential rate just before we got on the chat, and I'm just trying to make sure I don't have a huge piece of broccoli in my teeth at this moment.
Now it looks good so far.
There we go.
No, that's a good point. Well, being late, I don't know. That's just professionalism in general, I guess. You could say that being late is something to be avoided. Yeah, definitely. So just to do a little intro to you, Luc. Hopefully people have seen you before here on this channel, but you are a business builder from where we are right now in Winnipeg, Canada. And you're also you're from the First Customer Club, as I understand. I just linked to your channel. So you're a feature channel on mine. That's perfect. So everybody go check out the First Customer Club, which is Luc's sort of native area where you're going to be seeing him on a regular basis. How often are you doing videos and things for that channel?
Yeah, so I'm having fun being on this podcast, and perhaps this podcast inspired me to find a place to talk even more, which is where I'm doing it on First Customer Club. I have experience finding a first customer roughly 10 times in my startup and business journey, and I am doing it about once a week right now, Bill. So I'm trying not to be too religious to the schedule, but if you find the right topic and the right speaker, it's good to have somebody on. So I'm enjoying the process, and this is something that's valuable for me and not just for the audience. And probably my favorite part of being on the company's expert is the questions that we get in the comment section on YouTube. So I encourage anybody that tunes in, ask a question, we'll give it a shot.
Yeah, sounds good. So, okay, so today we're talking about entrepreneurs. You've been an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur like 20 years ago. Since then, I've been helping entrepreneurs. Your entrepreneurial experience is a little more recent. And you've done, I think, several ventures, right, in the last few years.
Yeah, I have. And it's, when we talk about entrepreneurship, I guess what we need to try to do is make sure to communicate that there's different types of entrepreneurship. A lot of my entrepreneurship experience has been working with new technology companies that have something disruptive, whether it's software or hardware. But that doesn't say that opening up a coffee shop on the corner that has a lot of foot traffic and you can get a good deal on the lease and you can have a good menu and you can offer a good service, that's entrepreneurship too. So there's probably 20 different forms, and hopefully we'll be able to talk to all those on today's chat, hey?
Yes, that's true. This applies not just to the stereotypical startup situation where you have a bunch of young guys starting a web-based tech company, which is fine. But this also applies to, I hate the term non-innovative businesses, but traditional businesses. I always use the example of the plumbing company or like a restaurant, like you said. These are conventional businesses. What is sometimes referred to just simply under the moniker of small business. So this is innovative companies and traditional companies. This applies to everyone equally. So if you're thinking about starting up your own business, whether it's an innovative type company or it's more of a traditional type company, like a coffee shop or something like that, this would apply. So do you want to kick us off? There's several traits. What would be a good one to start with?
Well, I will start with with a trait that's probably found in all those who've tuned in today, which is the ability to ask for help. Because I don't think any entrepreneur has all the answers. And, this is specifically important for those who are going into a new industry where they don't know everything. Like, there's kind of two types of businesses you can start. There's the type of business that you've been in it for a while, you've learned about it, maybe you were an employee, maybe you've done a lot of research, but you've been in the industry, you know the language, you know the players, you know the products, you know the market, and you use that as an advantage to start. And then there's the other type, which is more or less my experience, where you're kind of noticing an opportunity in an industry that you're not from. You're noticing something new, a new problem from an industry that you accidentally fell into. And in that situation specifically, but any situation, I think knowing how to ask for help, being open from an ego perspective to put your ego in check and ask for help, I think is huge. And I think I've seen companies not be able to do that. So it sounds simple, but it's a little bit of a challenge. Do you agree?
Oh yeah, I do agree. It's, it depends also what stage of life you're in, because a lot of people start, or they do entrepreneurial type ventures, a lot of them in their 20s, right? And when you're in your 20s and you're still, are you still technically in your 20s? You're in your 20s, right? Late 20s?
My family doesn't give me the credit, but yeah, they keep rounding me up, but technically I'm 29.
Okay, so yeah, you still just technically fall within that. So, here's the thing: I'm older than in my 20s, but when I was the CEO of a company, I was in my late 20s, like you, and this is the old guy talking here. But you talk to people that are in their 40s, 50s, and what probably a lot of people will tell you is that their opinion of people in their 20s are that people in their 20s think they know everything, and they don't. And at a certain point, most people find out that they are in fact wrong. And you incorporate that life experience. And then when you're in your 30s and 40s, you tend to feel that, you have more of a balanced view of the world. This is what people in their 40s and 50s will say. Obviously, that's not what you think in your 20s. And when you're in your 20s, you're unstoppable. You got an idea, you're going to change the world. And that's great. And a lot of people do it. And using that energy is great. However, what you just said about, the ability to learn, that is also important. You are going to find, most people find, maybe not everybody, but most people find that at some point they think they're right and they turn out to be wrong. And when that occurs, you get a little bit more humble and you learn to respect other people's opinions a bit more. And I certainly had that experience. I have been wrong many times. I've been right a few times, but I've been wrong many times. And after that happens a couple of times, you then learn to listen. You then learn to think, you know what, it may not be as easy as it looks. I may not have all the answers. Maybe I should actually consider what these people are saying and learn from them. Yeah,
I would agree. It seems like, for me, like the best entrepreneurs seem like they are a combination of a number of different personalities. Like, you almost want to have split personalities in order to have all the good characteristics. Like, I'll give an example. It's good to be an introvert and it's good to be an extrovert. So I know that this is a topic that interests you too. It's really good to be able to go out there and get attention and get in front of customers and get in front of users. Like, I would almost say you need to do that to some extent, even if you are an introvert. But at the same time, to be an introvert has its advantages too. Being able to, sit in a room for hours and problem solve and think something through and deal with the loneliness of entrepreneurship is a great quality as well. being able to have enough stubbornness and ego to be a little bit blind and just go into something full force in the sixth gear, but at the same time be open to ask people for feedback. Like, it's a difficult line to draw, and I don't know the perfect place to do it, but I see entrepreneurs that are successful are able to handle defeats because they just keep going. And that's such a cool quality, but being able to also realize, yeah, I feel like I know enough, but it's going to help me if I talk to that person over there. Well, where do you think this balance comes from? Do you think you're either one or the other, or do you think we should try to be a little split personality?
I think that, first of all, you have to be a generalist. If you're an entrepreneur, you are a generalist. You're not a specialist. You are a generalist. And so that is consistent with what you're saying. You have to have some introverted qualities. Basically, you just have to get down to work. Okay, you have to be okay being by yourself, but you have to be able to just get on with some work. It's not going to be glamorous. It's not going to be very high level, but you need that ability. And then the other flip side of the coin is, like you said, is the extroverted side. You are working on a business problem. You have to sell something, and you have to evangelize. You have to recruit people. You have to try and get investors. You have to try and get partners. In order to do this, you have to get out and talk to people. You can't shy away from communication. You can't be absolutely terrible at communication if you're running the show. You have to be decent at it. So yeah, you have to have those extroverted traits also. So I would say this goes across the board. I would set that, for as far as I'm concerned, that sets the framework of what we're talking about here. You have to be a generalist. So being okay with introverted activity and extroverted activity is going to be a necessity.
Yeah, totally. I think communication skills is right near the top. Like, I can't remember the exact quote, but basically, like 85% of success really comes down to communication, because you can know exactly the right problem to solve. You can know exactly how to build out the minimum viable product. You can know how to balance your cash flows. But at the end of the day, like, your ability to communicate clearly and concisely with people is such a huge thing. And this is partially just the soft skill of communication. But to suggest very simply, because there are people from around the world joining this chat, I think it's a huge advantage just to have good English communication skills, specifically because if I sound biased because we are speaking English, but English is the most dominant language in the world right now. And I see people that don't know English lose the advantage. I see people that know a little bit of English. They immediately get the job. They immediately get ahead. They get the customer. But to be able to go from basic level English to proper grammar, clear understanding English, like, I think that little difference maker really, really makes a difference, because it's difficult to communicate a new business idea, a new vision. So I think just improving communication skills, being empathetic about what they are hearing, and really, if English is not your first language, like, learn it, master it, speak it. I think it's such an advantage for so many people in such a big world.
Yeah, well, certainly if you're doing international business, you're doing business across borders, you're trying to get customers internationally. Yes, I would agree with that. It's not the dominant language in terms of numbers. I think it's still Mandarin, right? Mandarin is still like Cantonese, some of the other dialects. Chinese, I think, is still the number one. But anyway, that's beside the point. Yeah, so to set the framework here, if you're going to be a generalist, now this basically applies to a startup in general. So as an individual, let's pretend that you are an introvert and you're just not into networking or communicating with people. That's not your strength. That's not you hate that with a passion. You can still be in business. It just means that you have to someone in your organization has to have those skill sets. So you would have to round out your skill sets by partnering with somebody that has the skills that you don't. So between the two of you, everybody has all the skills necessary. So someone who's maybe the technical person that's an introvert, another person would be the salesperson who's an extrovert. But at the end of the day, your startup venture has to have all these necessary skills. So I think we're gonna move into those, and to start talking about a specific one, I would say customer focus. I would say like recognizing that, this is a business problem. It's not a technical problem. So technical entrepreneurs need to have the business skills and the sales skills somewhere in there. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And I'm trying to think, like, is it really business skills or or sales skills, or is it just really a good understanding of people, or is it just being really practical, or is it just enough experience? But yeah, the people that either know to do it because it's technically the right thing to do in a startup is to be customer centric, or maybe people just do it because it's their human nature and they're really good at connecting with other people. I think either way, the fact is exactly how you said it is. I think being customer centric is really good because it reduces the risk that you waste your time building the wrong thing. It
Definitely
increases the chances you can actually get the sale. It increases the chances that consequently you will find access to, funding, you will find the right business partners, you will find all that stuff if you're customer centric. So I think that's a really good thing to be. I think in terms of the traits that people that are customer centric, I think being empathetic is right at the top, being able to put yourself in the shoes of your customer or your user. I often use those words synonymously, but they're different. Very simply, the customer is the one that holds the purse strings and makes the decisions. The user is the person who will actually physically be experiencing, using, benefiting directly from your product. So being able to, be customer and user centric, I think is really, really key. And you do that from, being empathetic and thinking about them. You do that from being curious and asking them 21 questions about, what they do, what their pains are, what keeps them up at night. There's a lot of really good questions to ask, and being inquisitive, I feel.
Yeah, exactly. I would say all of the above. Like you mentioned several traits. You need to have some competency in all of that. You need to be able to sell. You need to be able to understand people. You need to have good communication skills. You need to have an interest for that kind of stuff. Because if you can do it, but you absolutely hate it, that is probably not the best situation. You would probably want somebody to partner with somebody who that's more natural to them and they enjoy doing that type of activity. Because if you hate it, you will shy away from it. And when you shy away from it, it won't get done. And, I've seen that both ways. I've seen technical people that won't do the sales part. And I've seen salesperson type entrepreneurs who can't buckle down and get down to the operations type work. So in those situations, I'd recommend that those people would partner with people with the missing skills. So that, to me, leads us to another trait, which is that, like you said, nobody is strong everywhere. Nobody knows everything. You have to be willing to learn. You have to be willing to get into things that you know nothing about, and be okay with just jumping in and learning it and getting it done and solving it. Like, for example, you may not know, how business corporate structure works, like with shares, if you're going to enter a partnership and all this, how does shares work? What's share dilution? What are options? How do you write a shareholder agreement? What are the things that should be in there? Maybe you know absolutely nothing about this, but you want to have your own company. That's an example of something you'd have to jump in and learn and, tolerate doing something that you never thought you would get into or never had an interest in. and just get it done.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs enter businesses not knowing, like an understanding of financing and accounting, to put it specifically.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Understanding numbers. A lot of entrepreneurs start without that understanding. I think it would be a huge edge. So I don't want to say that if entrepreneurs don't have some of the traits that we mention on this call, that they shouldn't start a company, because I think startups kind of force you to figure out what you don't know and what you aren't good at. So you'll get to a point where you'll realize something is your problem. Don't suffer from analysis paralysis. Get out there. But yeah, if you come into it understanding financing and accounting, that really helps. If you understand, options for, like, how do you raise money? What is it? What is a convertible note? And why is everybody talking about this as the easiest way to raise money from an investor in the form of equity? It really helps to know. And how do you acquire that knowledge? Well, there's 50 different ways. You can get it from talking to people. You can get it from reading books like Venture Deals by Brad Feld, for example.
Okay.
Just to pick up enough information. You can get it from talking to lawyers and accountants. Just make sure who you're talking to has worked with early stage businesses, because not every lawyer knows how to do the initial documents really well to how to start a startup. So make sure you're talking to the right person. But yeah, I think it's an edge for anyone who understands financing and accounting and the legal side of things. And that's why it's cool when you see some companies, they'll partner with someone who has that skill set, right? And they might not be a full-time partner, but that way you can get out of a lot of legal fees, can't you, if you have somebody on the inside?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you're absolutely right. You're getting into all these different areas of business. Not many people want to get into, starting a company to learn accounting. If you don't come from the accounting finance world, say you want to open a restaurant or something, most people don't come into it thinking, I really want to learn accounting, right? That's something that once they start, they discover that, they have to have a certain level of competence with. So if you're the type of person that likes learning things, entrepreneurship may be for you, because you're going to be thrown into the deep end. You're going to have to learn many different things. And, I also want to point out that, if you're not sure if entrepreneurship is for you, I've always felt that people who attempt entrepreneurship, they also make better employees because of this, because they've been thrown in, let's pretend that you're an accountant. Okay. Let's pretend that you're an accountant by training. Let's flip this around. And, so accounting well, but nothing about sales, nothing about, what you said, talking to people, a protocol, communication, that kind of stuff, that's something that you know nothing about. Also, maybe the administrative stuff you don't have a background in. You don't know how to set up a company. You've never talked to a lawyer in your life. You've never, ever been to an event to network. If you're an accountant then that tries to start their own accounting firm, and so you have to deal with all these extra things. You have to try and get out and sell. You have to set up a company. You have to go to events, to do promotion. It throws you in the deep end, and you learn the stuff. You get exposure to these different areas, and then you develop a much bigger appreciation for it. And you see how all these different pieces tie together to make a business. And because of that, you are a more valuable employee. So even if the entrepreneurship doesn't, end up being the long-term thing you do, if you go back to working at a regular 9-to-5 job in a company, you make a better employee because your decision-making abilities are better. And you have a greater awareness of, the role that you play and how it fits with the larger picture. So, in the past, I've hired people that have done entrepreneurship ventures and failed, but they've put that on their resume. They say, I was the founder of this company. It didn't go anywhere. It was like a 6 or 9 month thing that I did, but I put it on there because I learned a hell of a lot. And most HR people that I've worked with that haven't done entrepreneurial stuff, they may not understand that, but I understand how valuable that is. And a lot of executives will understand how important that is.
Yeah, I think it gets overused, this word, but the whole self-starter kind of idea, Bill.
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
I think that's kind of what gets reinforced here, right? Like if you see somebody who's out there, who's doing things, who's taking the initiative, who's sticking their head out and taking risks that others won't, yeah, even if it doesn't work, it immediately changes your status from putting your resume in the middle of the pile to your resume goes on the top of the pile, or your resume even skips the pile, ideally, because some people or somebody recognizes what you've done, as a consequence of what you did. So looking at a startup as a failure is not necessarily true, right? It depends what you gained along the way. It can be a financial failure. I've had a bunch of those, but we've still delivered good products to clients that are still around today, making a real difference. We've still had a real impact. We've still learned a ton of things. I met my common law partner halfway across the world as a consequence of a business that was not a financial home run. Like, these things happen. So yeah, I think it definitely, like, proving to the world that you can stick your neck out and do things that are valuable to you, I think is huge. And I think that kind of ties into another trait for me. It's someone, you see a lot of successful entrepreneurs as people that have a clear purpose or a clear motivation. And this is a little bit, again, in that balancing out, being stubborn and going with your gut, with asking for help, because that stubbornness kind of comes from, really feeling like what you're doing is important, feeling like what you're doing matters, to have a clear idea of where you want to take something, to see the light at the other end of the tunnel, and then be running towards that light regardless of what happens along the way. So I see a lot of successful entrepreneurs have a clear purpose, clear motivation, and this is the thing that actually helps to scoop in your first customers. This is the thing that scoops in and convinces that person to be your business partner when you are still at that early stage. This is what convinces the employees who have maybe taken a slight haircut on their salary in exchange for a chance to work in your team as part of a startup. So I think clear purpose, clear motivation is something that will help you be more successful because of all these ancillary benefits, like being able to attract and retain talent.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, one of the clear personality traits that separates entrepreneurs from people who are not entrepreneurs and have never been entrepreneurs is initiative. A lot of people that work in large enterprise or larger companies, anything bigger than, I'd say, 150 employees, and students, I've taught in colleges and universities on the side over the years. And, most students, most of those type of large enterprise employees, one characteristic that they all have, or the vast majority, I'd say over 80% of them have, is they don't really have initiative. They wait to be told what to do instead of just doing it. If you tell them, okay, I need you to go and do this, but you don't give them all the details, their instinct is to not figure the details out on their own, but to come to you and ask you, well, do you want it done this way or this way or this way or this way? Whereas you get a few students or a few employees that tend to be the better students and the better employees. That's a trait that really helps them, is that they have initiative. This ability to say, look, I'll figure out the details and I'll just get it done. And now, of course, yes, you do risk making a mistake whenever you go out and you take initiative and you do something. Maybe if it's outside your comfort zone, it's outside your core competency. There's a risk that you might not do it right the first time, but that's fine. You know what? It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to not know everything. And I think a lot of people are so afraid of failure, and so much of their daily activity in companies is documenting what you do. So you're covering your butt, right? They're so afraid of making a mistake that it paralyzes them. And so that's what I find entrepreneurs have. These are people that can take initiative. They can go out. They don't know, they'll find out. If they've never done it before, they'll give it a try, right? And I think that's the greatest trait. That's what's going to make you succeed in entrepreneurship. It's also going to make you succeed in, most other corporate jobs if you go back into that world.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, and about how risk tolerance plays into this, and how, you asked before, Bill, if you're not sure if you want to be an entrepreneur, some of the things that you should be considering. If you're not sure if you want to be an entrepreneur, you can still do all these things. You can still show the initiative. You can still get out there and be curious and be empathetic and be customer focused. Just try to approach the business, which I think this is good advice in general. Approach the business from a bootstrapping perspective, at least at first. And that means try to do things in ways that don't cost you a lot of money, or in other ways are really cost efficient. So that's a benefit of being an early stage company, especially if you have the right approach, is you don't necessarily have to risk so much. So it's one thing to risk your personal savings of your family, your mortgage, your life. It's another thing to risk your time. And I think entrepreneurs have to risk their time one way or another. But even from that perspective, be the most efficient with it. Start with something small and test it. And, show initiative starting from that small scale, right? You don't need to bite off more than you can chew. Make sure that people want to buy something before you build it. Do your due diligence. Find people that are saying really good things about your idea before you've invested any money into it. And then when you do invest money into it, don't build 73 different features. If your feedback tells you that 80% of your most interested potential prospects like 2 or 3 main features the most, build something with 1, 2, 3 features. Get them to use it. See what they need in order to pay for it. I think there's a way to be agile, and this agile approach, again, it's something technical that entrepreneurs learn, and it's an advantage for those who aren't, self-made millionaires yet. You want to be as agile as you can to the customer needs and for the benefit of your bank account. And I think that that's a good approach. They can let more people explore the world of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, like to kind of, you mentioned the money thing. You mentioned raising financing, raising capital for an entrepreneurship venture. That's something that all entrepreneurs have to deal with. They have to encounter this problem. Excuse me. And, this is kind of, I have a little bit of a controversial opinion on this. I think it's actually good that when most people do on an entrepreneurship type venture, there isn't a lot of people throwing, investors or lenders throwing money at you. I think this is a good thing, because it really forces you to, number one, think very frugally, to think like, okay, is there a cheaper way? Is there a cheaper way? Now that type of thinking doesn't work universally, but you have to have understood that type of mentality. That really frames how you solve problems. Now, to give you an example of this, in a lot of corporate enterprise, you have people that work as project managers. And I worked as a project manager for a few years, and, or they work in marketing, for example, or they work in operations. Now, in all those fields, they're asked to solve problems. They will be presented with a problem that says we have to boost our sales, or we have to deliver more product, or we have to get into this market, or we have to sell this, or, whatever the challenge is, right? Now, I can always tell, I like to think I can always tell who's had entrepreneurial experience in some way, shape, or form and who hasn't. Because the people that haven't, they will come up with some elaborate plan that requires tons of capital to do. Like they just get used to this idea of spending money. Anybody that's worked in my experience, and I'm a little biased here, but that's worked in government has that, opinion, oh, we'll just throw money at the problem. We'll talk and we'll throw money at it. We'll spend lots of money and things will happen. And you contrast that with people that have been entrepreneurs. And in my opinion, they are much better able to condense the problem down to its essentials and directly address the problem without throwing tons and tons of money, without blowing this huge budget on it. They understand how to validate something, so that you make sure that this is the right approach before you break the bank throwing money at it. It's that type of thinking. It's what's going to lead you to success as an entrepreneur. It's also going to lead you to success as making better business decisions. So you need to think like that. And the only way you think like that is by being thrown into this, entrepreneurial type situation where you have to start something from scratch, where you don't have a lot of investors backing you, giving you millions of dollars to throw at the problem. It forces you to use your brain. And that's a great trait that's highly sought after. So that's one of the advantages that you can really develop in yourself when you do entrepreneurial ventures.
Yeah, it's also the thought, if it was so easy, everybody would do it, right, Bill? So if everyone got access to funding that easy, it would be weird. Something would be wrong. And I completely agree with you. You're going to build the wrong habits if you just have money to throw at your problems, because you'll just do things like, oh, I'm just going to throw, $500 a day on my Google AdWords budget. Well, how are you deciding what your ideal customer profile is? How do you know this is the ad that they want to see? Have you done any type of, customer feedback? Have you gotten in front of any customers? Have you asked them? Often these things can be done, using pen and paper, using something like Google Forms. You can do a lot of things without requiring all the big tech. I was just talking to a serial SaaS entrepreneur with multiple exits, and I asked him, oh, what tool do you use for customer segmentation for an early stage company? And he said, if you're an early stage company, just get out Google Forms, get out Typeform, get out one of these survey tools, and instead of relying on data and analytics and all these reporting tools and all these software programs, just ask your customers, right? And I think starting there, starting from the perspective, you're still rubbing two sticks together, you're figuring things out, doing that for your first few hundred customers, and then saying, I figured out something that works, and now I'm going to add some budget to it because I already know the formula. But I don't think you'll get the formula as easily, or you'll be getting the formula with a certain amount of bias that will actually cripple you if budget's no object.
Yeah, I think that's great. The first thing you said, the AdWords, I thought was a great example, because that shows you how money just covers over a ton of bad thinking, a ton of mistakes, right? Now, if you're trying to promote something and you've got an unlimited budget, you do what you just said, where, you could just throw money at the problem. Let's just pay for more ads. You're not really addressing the fact that your ads are not very effective, because maybe you put out a certain amount of promotion and it doesn't get the response that you're anticipating. So in order to get more of a response, you just throw money at the problem. Okay, more ads, we'll just, ramp up our budget. And you end up making your numbers, you make your sales, but it costs you more promotion budget than you were expecting. So when you have the budget, you don't really think about, okay, maybe this is the wrong approach. Maybe we have to tweak something. Maybe the message is bad. Maybe the channel is bad. Maybe, there's a problem with this. If you're on a budget, it forces you to do that thinking. It forces you to okay, that didn't work. So, okay, what can I do? I need something that's effective. Obviously, I have to change something. What should it be? So it really forces you to do that. And that's the entrepreneurial experience. And that's an essential skill, as far as I'm concerned, for people to go off and make good business decisions.
Agreed. Yeah, you could spend $100,000 on an AdWord budget, and you could find 10 paying customers. 100,000 for 100 customers. Or you could spend $1,000 and you could find 10 customers. Well, the second one is 10 times better ROI for your dollar. And if you take that example, it doesn't need to be 1,000. You could scale that down. I spent $100 over the course of 2 weeks, and I got 30 people that clicked to my website, and I got 3 customers. You take that information, you test it, you revise it, you show the efficiencies of that conversion, you take that to an investor later, and they'll be impressed with how experimental and how agile you got. And that's the formula, right? Eventually, every business wants to get to the point where if I spend an extra dollar on marketing, I bring in an extra $1.30 in sales. Like once you get that clear, your pitch to investors becomes quite easy. But I think every business needs to figure out how to get to that point.
Yeah.
The best, like my favorite entrepreneur, when I think about, I wanted to share my favorite entrepreneur that I know locally in my own community. And this person inspired me when I was in my early 20s to get out there and do it, was the person who really, every time he talks, it just makes sense. And he doesn't seem like the smartest, like he doesn't use big words. So he doesn't try to overly impress people, use the biggest words. He just really explains everything very simply, very, very smartly, but again, very layman's terms. He can hear what you say and put it into a few words very easily. Just the most clear communicator that I know. And this person is a salesperson in general, but like this type of person, when they get into a room in front of a customer, in front of a partner, the ability for that person to take whatever it is that they're doing, whether they're talking about their new marketing strategy, whether they're talking about their plan to raise capital, whatever it is, it's just so simple. So I think entrepreneurs should figure out a way so that they can get to a point where they understand their business plan in a really simple way, and don't try to sound like the smartest person in the room. You'll probably sound a lot smarter if you speak simply. You've probably experienced some of those entrepreneurs in your personal journey as an entrepreneur, Bill, and also as a mentor of a lot of entrepreneurs. Like you probably see the entrepreneurs that come in and they try to talk really smart, and you've seen those that just tell you how it is. Do you have any feedback on that?
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of hot air, definitely. It's true. You need to. I think that people who have been entrepreneurs, they can see through that, right? I mean, there's people that like you say, they use a lot of cliches and they talk about this stuff, but they don't. It's not really based on anything real. It's just based on, just business speak. So I just want to say something that has occurred to me that is relevant for this, and I've said this when I've been teaching class and stuff, is just modern theories of leadership. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this might be a little interesting, hopefully. Okay, we got a question in the chat, actually. Is it essential in this day and age to have online ads? Well, you could probably speak to that more than I could, Luke.
I think the very short answer is no, but I think it depends. It depends what you're selling and who you're selling it to. If you're selling to people that do not ever go on the internet, then you should never have an ad on the internet.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, the only exception to that is like even if your customer isn't on the internet, maybe you don't want ads, but to be on the internet to maybe attract some employees or strategic partners, there's different stakeholders that you want to attract. It's not just your customer. You want to have a business that looks good for potential partnerships, for potential employees. You see a lot of websites that like dedicate a whole section, usually towards the bottom, but it's about like attracting employees. It's like, ooh, if you believe in this mission, if you want to solve X with Y, if you're you're a self-starter, click here and apply. So it depends who you want to target, but purely from finding customers, yeah, let's think about where your customers are, how they behave, and let's say your customers do go online sometimes. That still doesn't mean that you need to prioritize being online, because I think you just need to find one channel. One channel is better than having three channels that are okay, right?
Yeah, I would say it's probably a good idea to have an online presence in some way, shape, or form. But online ads, no, it's gonna vary depending on your situation. But no, for the traits, something that's relevant is modern theories of leadership. See, before 1950, they thought that leaders were born rather than made. That if you naturally had certain traits, you were going to be a leader. You would be influencing others. Other people would look up to you. They would take their cue from you. Things like this. And then in the 1950s or in the early 1950s, when they studied this, they said, okay, well, what are the list of traits you need? And the problem was they couldn't figure out what traits it was that made a great leader. Because just when you think something is essential, we see real world examples where they don't have that. Like, for example, you might think, okay, to be a leader, you have to be an extrovert, right? You have to, look at Gandhi. Gandhi influenced millions. He didn't get up and shout. He was very, sort of low-key type person, not very extrovert. Okay, so you have to be good-looking and cool to be a leader. You have to be physically attractive and, you have to very, very, very charismatic. Look at Bill Gates. Bill Gates is not cool. He never has been. But millions of people still hang off that guy's every word.
And some might even say he's a little funny looking, Bill.
Yeah, just a little. Or you have to be very good looking. Look at Winston Churchill. That guy was not good looking at any point in his life over the age of 18. So just when you think that, you have to have these essential traits, we find that none of those traits, if you single any one of them out, are actually necessary. So the question was, if none of the traits are necessary, then what makes a leader? And so the thinking on this changed during the 1950s to the modern thinking that we have today, which is that leaders are not born, but they're made. And what this means is that anybody can learn to be a leader. Like, whatever traits you need, you can pick those up. So I apply this theory to entrepreneurship. It's like saying, what are the traits that an entrepreneur needs? I would be hard pressed to find any actual trait. And I would challenge you, Luke, and anyone watching this to say, like, what is absolutely essential that you need to be an entrepreneur? I would question any trait that somebody says. You could get around anything. And the obvious way to do it in a startup is to partner with somebody that has, the complementing skills. Look at Apple. Like, look at Steve Wozniak, who created all the technology for Apple. That guy wasn't cool. That guy couldn't network. He's a technical genius, right? But so you could question any particular trait, and so it becomes more of a question of what are you going to do to compensate for it or to fill in those skills. I think that's kind of where this leads. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I could not agree more. This makes me really realize that, there's not one way to build a business. It's not, if it was, then if there was one way to guaranteed build a successful business, then I think we could have a way to say these are guaranteed the best traits to have. But because it's not that clear, we can't be clear ourselves. I think that you need to understand what your traits are, what your advantages are, what your disadvantages are. You need to understand what you like to do, what you don't like to do. This is your life. This is your time. If you're not building a business in a way which satisfies you, then go and get a job. Like, you don't put yourself through the grind of starting a business yourself if you're doing it in such a way where you hate what you're doing. So I think you can find customers through many different channels. You can find customers by sitting at home in your bedroom if you're terrified of people. You can do it. You will have limited options. You will have to prioritize certain marketing channels over others. You would be, perhaps benefited by finding a business partner, but you still don't need to find one. You just need to look at what you got and do with it what you can. And I think that's sort of that's sort of the best advice I would say, is just understand who you are, what you want to do, and work with that. And that's not saying that you can't learn new things. You should learn new things. But if you just realize that you don't like big networking events, and if you don't think that going to big networking events is going to be the make or break for your business, then don't do it. Then instead, do something like have one-on-one meetings. You don't need to be in a room of 55 people that are all sharing the same plates of appetizers, but you can have one-on-one coffees specifically with people that you reach out to. That might be a lot easier for an introvert to tackle as opposed to a big, broad room. So I think we got to work with it with what we got, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's kind of, I think, the takeaway at the end of the day is that you have to produce the results, but the way of producing those results, the method or the mechanism, you have flexibility to do it your own way. And I find that as humans, we tend to need validation for us to go and do something. We need to see that it's okay to do that. Almost like someone gives you permission by showing you them doing it first for you to think, oh, okay, oh, you could do it like that. It's okay to do it like that. Okay, then I will go out and do that. Whereas if you had never seen an example of it, you would tend to conclude, okay, you just don't do it that way. That's not something I should pursue because I'm sure it doesn't work. I don't see anyone doing that. So that makes us afraid. That makes us think, oh, it's not okay to do it our way. And everybody has to find their own groove, their own natural way of doing things. Now, you said, like what you said about, let's say you're not an extrovert, you don't like doing networking events. Well, think of the result. Okay, what is the result of networking events? The reason you would go to them is to gain partners or gain customers or make sales, right? So if you can achieve those ends through different means, like doing it your way, then that's fine. Think of like, okay, how can I achieve the same result, but without having to do that thing that I hate, right? Or do it in that way. So this is the magic of entrepreneurship. It forces you to think about these things. And just by thinking of this and trying to solve these problems, you learn, and you're going to screw up. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to discover your limitations. You're going to discover truths about you, but that's good. It's all good. Don't be afraid to do that. The only recommendation I would have is don't bet your life savings in that process, and you will come out on top.
I agree. Bill, do we have time for me to ask you if you know any traits you think don't make successful entrepreneurs? Can you think of something that there's a bit of a trend?
Yeah, we'll do this, and then maybe we'll ramp down. Well, number one, being really entitled is obviously bad. I mean, that you don't need to be a rocket scientist to know this. It sounds obvious, but I've seen entrepreneurs that they're just entitled. Now, what I mean by that is one example is that they, never having done a business before, they just assume that, oh, if I do promotion, customers will show up. If I build it, they will come. And I know that's an oft repeated catchphrase in the startup world. Build it and they will come. And I've seen that abused so many times because it tends to give people an excuse to ignore, fundamental marketing principles that always apply. They've applied for the last 5,000 years to human activity. They don't just go away. You will have to promote your business. You will have to listen to your customers, things like that. So I've seen that kind of entitlement that, what I'm doing is brilliant. And when people hear about it, they will buy it. So that's a trait that I think that really gets in the way of people being successful. Another one is saying, "Oh, I'm too important or too cool to do this particular task." You know, any startup founder, I think, who's really been in the trenches knows that you have to leave your dignity at the door. You have to do every job. You have to sweep the floors. You have to get food for people. You have to do, there's no job that's beneath you in a business if you want to be an entrepreneur. So you have to dispel that myth that, oh, you'll be wearing a suit and talking to investors, and then I'll have employed a team of employees and they do all the nitty-gritty work, not me. That kind of thinking that also gets in the way. You have to jump in, you have to learn. People think that they don't have to learn certain skills. You might say, okay, well, I'm a technical person. I don't do sales, so I'm not going to learn it. Well, no, you will have to do sales. You need to know something about sales if you're going to be a success. It just, even if you don't do it as your full-time occupation, you need to be aware of it. You need to understand the fundamentals. So being almost, I don't know what you call that, arrogance? Would you call that arrogance? When people say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'll get other people to do that. But whatever that is. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of this is a combination of arrogance and ignorance. Hey, somewhere at that intersection.
Yeah. And these are, and this is stuff I see over and over and over again. I see, like, I'm not talking about seeing this in 1 person out of 10. I'm seeing this out of 8 people out of 10. Entrepreneurs that I've mentored and stuff like that. It's very, very common.
Yeah, I to add a few to that list. The I'm too busy person, I think, is often someone that's not successful. They're very busy doing things on the business, but are they doing the right things? Are they prioritizing accordingly? I've had business partners tell me that they're too busy to help me with things. Are they too busy to help, or are they really saying that they're so stressed out with what they're doing that they can't see straight and their priorities are out of whack? So that can be a bit of an issue too. People that do not have emotional resilience, I think, people that are really fragile, I think, can often lead to failed startups, because when something bad happens, when all of a sudden, you're not able to go and visit your customers and there's something weird happening in the world, like, how are you able to emotionally be resilient to the times? I think that's something that's important. I wish I could say that, not nice people don't succeed, but the reality is there's a lot of successful people that get there for reasons that I would not be proud of. And then there's people that become successful specifically because they are nice people. So there's no specific rule. It's just good to think about these things. And, when you're trying to better yourself, be aware of things that can help you or hurt you in building your venture.
That's a great one that we never touched on, like being nice. I think it's a myth. I don't know where that came from. I don't know if it came from those Wall Street movies they made in the 80s or something, but like, if you're in business, you got to be a jerk. You got to be tough. You got to be mean. Yeah. Say no, like say it really harshly, so they get the message. No, that doesn't work. You can maybe succeed despite having those traits, being a jerk, being very off-putting. But you don't succeed because of, I don't care what anybody says. I mean, it is human nature that we gravitate towards people who are friendly, who are pleasant, who we feel that they are our friend, or they have a certain rapport with us. I mean, that's a natural thing. We are turned off by jerks, by people that, are gruff and mean and disrespectful. Anyone who works in sales and marketing, or basically sales, will know that's a fundamental truth. Now, if you have like a monopoly relationship where the customer has to come to you to get something, and you're a jerk, okay, yeah, you can still make sales, but you're not making sales because you're a jerk. That's actually hurting you. So, and I mean, I've met a lot of executives, and I'd say 80% of them are very friendly, amiable. They understand manners, they understand protocol, they understand, communication, interpersonal skills, and they're very charismatic. 20% of them are not. 20%, I think they feel that by being dominant, by being forceful, by being gruff, that makes them more powerful in some way, so that they are a force to be reckoned with. But in terms of being successful, if you interact with people like that, you're turning off everyone you interact with. So
yeah,
if they
I would agree.
Yeah, if they had a choice, they would not deal with you. They have no choice there, they're going to deal with you. But if they have a choice, first chance they get, they're going to deal with somebody else. So that's
you're not going to get that advisor meeting for coffee. You're not going to get that free ticket to the networking event. You're not going to get that discount on legal fees creating your shareholder agreement if you're a jerk.
Yeah, exactly. So don't be a jerk. be friendly, be amiable, work on your charisma, work on your communication skills, work on your interpersonal skills. I mean, it's not just being friendly and smiling and stuff. It's like, if someone asks you a question, answer it. Don't be one of those people where that's a personal turnoff of mine, where you would send an email or something to someone asking, say, 2 questions, and then they respond, but they don't really answer the questions, So it's like, that's not good communication protocol. So yeah, but be friendly, be polite, have a thirst for learning. Don't be arrogant. And if you don't have a lot of money to do your startup venture, look at it as an opportunity. Look at it as, we're really going to substitute thinking for just throwing money at a problem. We're going to learn the essentials, and that is what's going to give us a competitive edge, because we know how this business works more than anyone else, because we've had to really think about it and work it out. So as far as I'm concerned, that would be my final thought, where this journey ends today. What are your final thoughts, Luke?
Well, if I had a bell or a gong right beside me, I'd hit it right now, Bill. I completely agree with you there. And yeah, in terms of my final thoughts, not to add a new topic, but just be good at recognizing what an opportunity is and be ready to take it. Like a lot of things do come down to timing. A lot of things do come down to saying yes. A lot of things come down to opening up doors for yourself with potential customers, business partners, strategic partners, advisors, the whole shebang. But yeah, stick your neck out there and recognize what's a good opportunity and what's not. And as we said at the beginning, when in doubt, be customer and user centric.
Yeah, I would agree. That's great. That's great thoughts. So that's hopefully helpful for people. That's maybe a start. If you're thinking of doing a startup type venture, that hopefully gives you some direction possibly. And even if you're not, even if this is maybe an idea on the side, but you just want to have a 9-to-5 career working in a company, this also, I think, applies. So
yeah,
so that's
if people
great.
have questions for you after the show, Bill, how do they get in touch with you?
That's a great question. I have an email address. It's the company's expert at outlook.com. So I can I'll put that in the description so that'll be there. And what about yourself?
In terms of how to contact me, you can contact me at Luc, that's spelled Luc, the French way, Luc at firstcustomerclub.com.
Sounds good. And everybody check out Luc's channel, First Customer Club. As I said, it's a feature channel on my channel. So you should be able to link to that very easily. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Luc. It's a pleasure as always.
And the pleasure was all mine. Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.